The latest on Hurricane Irma. All times local 10:50 a.m. France has dispatched one of its most impressive military transport planes to assist recovery efforts near the hurricane-battered French overseas islands of Saint Martin and Saint Barth. In a statement Saturday, the French Army said the four-engine airlifter A400M had taken off from the mainland city of Orleans to the Caribbean with a Puma helicopter, a dozen military and technical personnel and humanitarian cargo. The fast-approaching Hurricane Jose, which is going to pass just above Saint Martin, has meant that all access to and from Saint Martin and Saint Barth has been halted. The A400M is expected to arrive at Fort-de-France, the capital of France's Caribbean Overseas Department of Martinique, and remain in the region at least a week to help with hurricane relief work. 10:40 a.m. Florida Gov. Rick Scott is heeding his own advice about Hurricane Irma by evacuating his beachside mansion along the Gulf Coast. The governor's office confirmed that Scott's family, including First Lady Ann Scott, left Naples in southwestern Florida ahead of the dangerous storm. Scott's daughter, her husband and their grandchildren have also evacuated. Scott's mansion is worth approximately $15 million, according to his latest financial disclosure. As governor, Scott usually splits his time between his mansion and the governor's mansion located in the state capital, Tallahassee. The multimillionaire businessman was first elected in 2010. 10:30 a.m. Residents in the French overseas territories of Saint Martin and Saint Barth have another hurricane at their doorstep after a devastating blow from Irma. Hurricane Jose was closing in Saturday. Forecasters expected winds of up to 93 miles per hour, 150 kilometers per hour, along with torrential rains and large waves. French authorities said Saturday that some 1,105 workers are now deployed Saint Martin and Saint Barth to help the island's recovery. By Saturday, damage estimates from Irma reached the €1.2 billion $1.44 billion mark, pockmarking the islands that have become famous as lush playgrounds for the rich and famous. In Saint Martin, travel to or from the island has ground to a halt until Jose passes. Jacques Witkowski is France's Director of Public Safety. He says the international airport isn't operational. The last airplane flew into the battered Grand Duchesse de Saint Martin Airport Friday. It carried emergency workers to help with reconstruction as well as specialists who aim to re-establish the island's damaged water and electricity systems. 10:15 a.m. Florida's governor is warning residents that storm surge of up to 12 feet in places will inundate houses. Gov. Rick Scott urged anyone living in an evacuation zone in southwest Florida to leave by noon Saturday as the threat of Hurricane Irma has shifted west. He says the storm is going to go faster than you are. Scott said 25,000 people in Florida have already lost electricity as Irma's outer bands have begun hitting the southern part of the state. The governor also warned of dangerous storm surge of between 6 feet 2 meters and 12 feet 4 meters across parts of Florida. He said this will cover your house. 8:45 a.m. The National Hurricane Center says the eye of powerful Hurricane Irma is expected to hit southwest Florida and Tampa sometime Sunday, but the entire state will feel the storm's effects. Hurricane Center spokesman and meteorologist Dennis Feltgen said Saturday that while Miami won't get the core of Irma, it will still get life-threatening hurricane conditions. The Category 4 storm pounded Cuba early Saturday with maximum sustained winds of 130 miles per hour, 215 kilometers per hour. It was expected to strengthen before hitting Florida. 8 a.m. Hurricane Irma's winds have slowed slightly while it rakes Cuba, but the massive storm is expected to strengthen again as it approaches Florida. The U.S. National Hurricane Center in Miami said Saturday morning that Irma remained a Category 4 storm with maximum sustained winds of 130 miles per hour, 215 kilometers per hour. Forecasters expect the storm to pick strength back up as it moves away from Cuba. The storm center was about 10 miles 15 kilometers northwest of Cape Arion, Cuba. That's also about 225 miles 365 kilometers south of Miami. Meteorologists say damaging winds from Irma's outer bands were already arriving in South Florida. The storm was expected to reach the Florida Keys on Sunday morning before moving up the state's Gulf Coast. 7:45 a.m. EDT meteorologists say damaging winds are blowing into South Florida as Hurricane Irma approaches. The National Weather Service said Saturday morning that damaging winds were moving into areas including Key Biscayne, Coral Gables and South Miami. Gusts of up to 56 miles per hour, 90 kilometers per hour were reported on Virginia Key off Miami as the storm's outer bands arrived. The center of the storm was about 245 miles 395 kilometers southeast of Miami early Saturday as it raked the northern coast of Cuba. The latest forecast track predicts the center of the storm will move along Florida's Gulf Coast through Monday, 6:25 a.m. France's public insurance agency estimates that Hurricane Irma inflicted €1.2 billion $1.44 billion in damage on infrastructure in the French overseas islands of Saint Martin and Saint Barthélemy. In a statement Saturday, the Caisse Centrale de Reassurance, France's public sector reinsurer that provides coverage for natural disasters, said that amount covers damage to houses, vehicles and businesses. It added that Hurricane Irma is one of the biggest natural catastrophes to have occurred in France in 35 years. The agency said affected residents have 10 days to make a claim starting from Saturday, when the status of a natural disaster was officially declared, 6:10 a.m. France's Director of Public Safety has held a press conference in Paris on the recovery efforts in the French overseas island territories of Saint Martin and Saint Barthélemy that are reeling from Hurricane Irma. Jacques Witkowski said Saturday that there are 1,100 people, both civilian and military, deployed on the islands to help with recovery. But he said they were also tasked with evacuation of residents ahead of another hurricane, Jose, which is expected to violently pummel islands in the Caribbean later on Saturday. Witkowski said the eye of Hurricane Jose will pass close to the islands of Saint Martin and Saint Barthélemy, 5:20 a.m. The National Hurricane Center says Irma has weakened slightly to a Category 4 hurricane, as it moves over the Camagüey archipelago of Cuba. Irma had briefly regained Category 5 strength late Friday, but now has maximum sustained winds of 155 miles per hour 249 kilometers per hour. The hurricane is about 245 miles 394 kilometers from Miami and moving about 12 miles per hour 19.3 kilometers per hour toward the west-northwest. In the Atlantic, Hurricane Jose is a Category 4 hurricane, about 190 miles 306 kilometers east-southeast of the northern Leeward Islands, moving toward the islands at 13 miles per hour 20.92 kilometers per hour with winds reaching 150 miles per hour. In the Gulf of Mexico, Hurricane Katia made landfall late Friday north of Tecolutla, Mexico and weakened to a tropical storm. By early Saturday morning it was 135 miles 217 kilometers south of Tampico, Mexico, moving sluggishly at only 2 miles per hour 3.2 kilometers per hour near the Sierra Madre Mountains with maximum winds of 40 miles per hour 64.4 kilometers per hour. It was expected to weaken further. Throughout the day, 3:20 a.m. Dutch Marines have dropped flyers from a helicopter warning beleaguered inhabitants on the devastated nation of Saint Martin to head to shelters as Hurricane Jose barrels through the Caribbean. Jose, a Category 4 storm with 150 miles per hour winds, was forecast to pass close to Saint Martin over the weekend, delivering a second damaging blow to the former Dutch colony that suffered catastrophic damage when Category 5 Hurricane Irma slammed into it on Wednesday. Peter Jandevan, a Dutch military commander on the island of Curaçao who is helping coordinate relief efforts on Saint Martin, tweeted a picture Saturday morning of a Marine dropping flyers out of a helicopter flying low over one of Saint Martin's shattered seafront neighborhoods, 2:20 a.m. The National Hurricane Center says the eye of Irma is moving over the Camagüey archipelago of Cuba as a Category 5 hurricane. The center says Irma made landfall there late Friday and has maximum sustained winds of 160 miles per hour 257 kilometers per hour. The hurricane is about 275 miles 443 kilometers from Miami and moving about 12 miles per hour 19.3 kilometers per hour toward the west. In the Gulf of Mexico, Hurricane Katia made landfall late Friday north of Tecolutla, Mexico and weakened to a tropical storm, with winds reaching 45 miles per hour 72.4 kilometers per hour. In the Atlantic, Hurricane Jose is a Category 4 hurricane, about 240 miles 386 kilometers east-southeast of the northern Leeward Islands, moving roughly westward at 14 miles per hour 23 kph with winds reaching 150 miles per hour, 12:35 a.m. A newly strengthened Irma is taking aim at South Florida with 160 miles per hour 257 kilometers per hour winds after battering Cuba and leaving more than 20 dead across the Caribbean, as another hurricane follows close behind. Irma regained Category 5 status late Friday. Thousands of people in the Caribbean fought desperately to find shelter or escape their storm-blasted islands, and more than 6 million people in Florida and Georgia were warned to leave their homes. Many residents and tourists were left reeling after the storm ravaged some of the world's most exclusive tropical playgrounds, known for their turquoise waters and lush green vegetation. among them St. Martin, St. Bart's, St. Thomas, Barbuda and Anguilla. Irma threatened to push its way northward from one end of Florida to the other beginning Sunday morning. Hurricane newsletter. Get the best of the AP's all formats reporting on Irma and Harvey in your inbox. http://opni.wahiked